So again, I just want to, in a few minutes, I'll be calling up my colleague, Annette Bourne, our research director, to give you an overview of the Factbook as well too. But before I do that, I want to thank all of our sponsors. You have the information on your sheets of all of our sponsors, and thanks very much to my colleague Amy Cola, who does a lot of the work getting sponsorships. Our sponsorships in here and in order, and we have a record number of sponsors this year as well too, and we appreciate every one of you. I particularly want to point out some of our lead sponsors, and that includes JP Morgan and Chase, and Elizabeth and Timothy. Did I see Elizabeth and Timothy? I don't think I saw them yet, but hopefully they'll be able to join us. And Bank of America, Kevin, did I see Kevin yet? I don't think, oh, they were Kevin right there. Kevin Tracy, our Rhode Island president, and we very much appreciate your support over many, many years of this work as well too. And one of the very first convenings around Housing Works, Bank of America was involved and engaged with as well too, and so we appreciate that support. We have a lot of dignitaries in the room. We'll be introducing our elected officials as we go throughout the day, but I want to point out a few special folks as well too. And that includes some colleagues from Roger Williams University, including our very own Richard Godfrey, who is now the director of the Cummings Real Estate Center. Many of us know Richard. It is so nice and fun to have Richard with us at Roger Williams University to talk about how to further the field and further training programs and other things. And then my boss, Alan Hance, who is Associate Provost at the university as well too, and Director of Community Partnerships. And Alan, thank you for coming and for all of your support as well too. Housing Works was integrated into Roger Williams University in 2014, and we continue to find ways and opportunities to work together. And Alan is relatively new to Roger Williams too, and he's been extremely helpful in helping us navigate through all of that as well too. So again, our sponsors, we thank you. We thank all of the team. As I said, we'll be and introducing some folks as we go along. But I want to welcome everybody on Zoom who is with us as well too. We've got quite a few colleagues on Zoom today, which is good because as you can see, we're pretty crowded here right now. So, so many people wanted to come, so we said we'll squeeze one more person in. But one of my colleagues, Roger Williams' colleague, but also State Representative June Speakman, is on Zoom because of her class schedule today. And June, as we know, has just been an enormously helpful and strong advocate on the House side. And I know we have the speaker couldn't be here today, but we have Christine and CJ from the House Policy Office joining us, representing him, and we appreciate the work, and we know we've got a lot more to come this session as well too. So we're grateful for that work and that effort as well too. And then my Senator Coleman, also had teaching schedule conflicts. Both June and Senator Coleman are professors in their day jobs, as you know. But again, she has been just a fabulous person to work with as well too on all things housing. And much more to come with her. And our colleagues at Rhode Island Department of Health are here. Michelle and Cindy and others. I don't know if Kareem's made it as of yet, but you'll see a lot of data around health and housing, excuse me, in Rhode Island. And so we look forward to working more with them on a lot of different things. And then finally, I want to welcome him to his first Factbook event. Josh Saul, the Secretary of Housing for the state, for his first Factbook event. At the speaker's press conference, everyone knows, can you see what I'm holding up? Everybody knows what this is, right? And at the speaker's press conference, I talked about this, and WD-40, I'm sure we've all used it for many different projects and many different things at our house to make things work better, right? Or to fix things as well too. So, but does anyone know why it's called WD-40? Any guesses? Yeah, Richard?
Water displacement, the 40th tribe.
That's what it stands for, but it's called WD-40 because it took the developer, or the people 39 times, and on the 40th time, they finally got the formula right. Now, as I told the speaker at his press conference, I'm not saying it's going to take us 39 times or 39 years to get housing right in the state, but there's a lot of tweaking and there's a lot of experimentation that we need to do in order to get things working and to get things moving and to provide housing for more people in our state. I also am reminded that there are 39 cities and towns in Rhode Island, and every one of those communities needs to contribute to the formula, whether it's accessory dwelling units in Cranston, more home ownership opportunities in Central Falls, working on healthy homes in Warren and Bristol and other areas. If everyone contributes to the formula, we will get to 40, and we will get to that statewide plan and vision of everybody having it, excuse me, everybody having a safe and decent place to live. So we're going to be playing some trivia throughout with our fabulous board chair, Steve, and those of you who know answers will get your own little can of WD-40. But I also want you to be keeping that in mind, and particularly the policy staff and our legislative leaders. It's going to take some tweaking, and it's going to take a while for us to kind of work things through, but we got to get started. We got to start putting things, experimenting and getting going. So with that, I'm going to call up my colleague Annette Bourne, our research and policy director, to give a quick overview of our Factbook, and then we'll start to hear from some of our elected officials. Annette.
Reading glasses, yes, this is a new thing. Okay, so good morning and thank you for being with us today for the launch of the 2022 Housing Factbook. Oh, I guess I need to go back to the, no, sorry, how do I go backwards? Can you go backwards one? Yes, thank you. Okay, here we go. I'm thinking that you, like I, have heard this many times over the last few months, but it is truly wonderful to see so many of you in person. In 2021, we asked, what do we do with the knowledge gained by the experience of a worldwide pandemic? And in 2022, we gathered the facts and the figures which we present to you today. The following presentation offers some of the takeaways from this year's edition, but also a roadmap to explore further and more deeply. There are many avenues to follow through the book, whatever your role. I am honored to be giving this presentation and very pleased to be joined later on by our new-ish research analyst, Bryce Kelly, but I need to acknowledge the significant effort of a growing team of helpers that makes this work possible, including our consultants, all down there at the back table, Dr. Per Fjellstad of UNH, and Christopher Schutz, our GIS consultant, our returning interns from Brown University Square Center programs, Toby Arment and Ariana Clark, and this summer's Prince of the Pums, Kevin Mauclair, who had to run so many cross-tabulations, he had to do them in his sleep in order to keep up with my requests. We continue to be grateful for our partnership with the Rhode Island Department of Health and are thankful to the municipal, state, and other partners who provide information and data directly. We greatly appreciate the talents of our graphic design partners at Lacuna Design and the wordsmithing and logic of the editing of Molly Sexton. Lastly, though, and definitely not least, is the Housing Works Rhode Island team. We are small, but indeed mighty. Amy Cola, communications coordinator, manages all efforts, large and small. Bryce Kelly, research analyst and partner in much of the research and analysis you are about to learn about, and our director, Brenda Clement, who brings a calm to my angst. Of course, our work would not be possible without the support of our advisory board, who bring deep expertise and across many related fields, and our sponsors, who appear on the next slide. I'm going in a wholly different direction. This is embarrassing, right? No, I'm not. I'm going. All right. Okay. We would like to once again thank this year's sponsors for their support of the 2022 Housing Factbook. Jumping right in. So I see. There we go. She got it. Okay. I will begin at the beginning with our Dear Reader letter, as written back in August. In accounting for the responses, resources, and opportunities of 2021 and early in 2022, we note that of $1.13 billion of federal funding for critical needs in Rhode Island related to the pandemic, especially those related to health equity, $250 million has been allocated to housing by the state from the ARPA funds for FY22 and FY 2023. At the time of the writing, rent relief had provided more than $230 million of federal rental assistance to nearly 36,000 Rhode Island renters and landlords. In checking the dashboard this week, however, it was up to more than $274 million, approved for more than 42,000 applications. We also now have new state laws and 2 legislative commissions. Yet, despite these thoughtful landmark actions, we know that challenges remain. In fact, it seems almost unfathomable to think that housing affordability has worsened, but the 2021 year-end median single-family home price of $365,000 reflected a 1-year increase of 14%, the highest single-year increase since the last spike in prices in 2001 to 2004. And the Wall Street Journal determined that the National Association of Realtors Housing Affordability Index was the worst it has been in 33 years. Measuring the crisis for renters is more difficult, however, as our state's size and relatively small number of large apartment complexes make useful municipal data difficult to obtain. It is only when grouped within the larger metro market, which includes all of Rhode Island and into Fall River and New Bedford, Mass., that the spikes in rent and shortage of inventory can be meaningfully quantified. What we do know is in June of 2022, Realtor.com reported that the Providence Metro had the 5th highest year-over-year rental cost increase in the country at nearly 24%. So, how do we see our way out of this crisis? One answer for Housing Works is not alone. We believe in working together and listening. A phrase I hear at many of the community tables I sit is change moves at the speed of trust, and I believe it applies here. Many housing researchers across New England have become hyper-focused on our history of land use and zoning. While we are some of the most beautiful landscape in our big, diverse country, we also have some of the most highly regulated land use. We must find a balance together. HUD's Office of Policy Development and Research's Regional Market Report notes that from Q4 2021 through Q2 2022, Rhode Island is the only New England state where multifamily construction declined in each quarter year over year. Many sincerely believe we need increased production of a diversity of housing types from a variety of multifamily types that include not only our traditional triple-deckers, but also courtyard apartments and townhouses, to accessory dwelling units, to mixed-use centers, to help alleviate this crisis. We need to explore this on behalf of the well-being of all Rhode Islanders. Once again, we continue to look at indicators across the state, regions, and municipalities. To begin, our statewide indicators include all that's listed here. If you're thinking, wow, that's a lot, it is. Some key takeaways from these sections include more than 1/3 of Rhode Island households are housing cost burdened. Among renters across most racial and ethnicity categories, more than 1 in 5 pays over 50% of their income to housing costs. There was a 105% increase from 2021 to 2022 of those who are chronically homeless and unsheltered. And while formal eviction filings with the court for non-payment of rent have decreased, eviction filings for other reasons have risen as much as 94%. More formal eviction filings moreover, formal eviction filings only represent a fraction of total evictions. While estimates vary, informal evictions may outstrip formal ones by a factor of 5. We continue to be grateful for the support and guidance of the Rhode Island Department of Health in our approach to viewing housing through the lens of social determinants of health. Each of these factors plays an important role to our overall well-being. In this year's Housing Factbook, we make a concerted effort to look at how these factors contribute to opportunity for Rhode Islanders. We are not alone in this effort. A number of indices are now trying to arrive at such a qualitative measure, along with our state's 15 health equity zones that seek to create more equitable opportunities for housing, food access, mental health, and much more. These health equity zones actually work across 26 municipalities, so I really urge you to find the one that is closest to you and please get involved. All this is to say, healthy and affordable homes create a path to opportunity. Both the location and the condition of the home matter. The most obvious connection between health and housing begins with the home itself. HUD designated these 7 principles of healthy housing, which more or less align with health and safety codes found in law. We have struggled for a number of years now to try to create what we would like to call a healthy housing report card. However, to really do so would require address-level data of code enforcement findings across all our municipalities. Sadly, we realized this year we are not alone in this struggle, as supported by this quote from the National Center for Healthy Homes report for Alexandria, Virginia. While the age of housing remains the greatest indicator of possible healthy housing issues, it is merely a proxy for actual problems. So once again, we offer an analysis of conditions that are generally worsened by older housing stock. The result is this year's Healthy Housing Assessment, which we will continue to work on with our partners to truly devise a healthy housing report card. The National Center for Healthy Homes includes affordability among its standards for healthy housing. As many of us have learned, especially through the pandemic, stress is a contributor to health. I learned the term allostatic load from my good friends at the Department of Health as a fancy way to say wear and tear on the body from repeated or chronic stress. It is surprising to no one here that being fearful of not being able to pay for your housing is one such major stress. So when we talk about healthy homes, we also mean homes that are affordable to a person's income. Houston, we have a problem. There is a significant disconnect between wages and the cost of housing across our state, as demonstrated by the gaps and numbers on this slide. Beyond these numbers, it continues to shock and sadden me that nearly 70% of the jobs identified as high-growth occupations by the Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training's Occupational Outlook 2028 do not pay the hourly housing wage of $24.32, which is identified by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition 2022 Outreach Report. At the same time, Rhode Island's average 2-bedroom apartment and median single-family home suggest hourly wages of $34.06 and $46.38 respectively to afford those costs of housing. We are grateful to the voters of Rhode Island for having supported the 4th Building Homes Rhode Island bond, and we look forward to the groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings ahead. We are also pleased with the legislature's action to create a dedicated funding stream for housing through an increase in the conveyance tax on homes purchased for over $800,000, which is expected to generate perhaps $4 million annually. However, that is not enough. Rhode Island continues to rely heavily on federal funding to meet its needs. Just 27% of the state's expenditures on housing over 2 federal program years were state dollars. And while we have an historic opportunity with $250 million of the federal ARPA dollars being dedicated to housing, if that were included in these figures, our state's share would shrink to a fraction of a percent. In moving to our regional overview, I will once again remind everyone that these are devised by the U.S. Census Bureau as public use microdata areas, or PUMAs. They are between 100,000 and 250,000 of population, and they are contiguous areas, including water. They are important because they offer us the ability to look at these smaller than state geographies and allow us to cross-tabulate data that help inform policy. There will be revisions announced to these maps later year, which will have alternative groupings within Providence County beyond the city itself. Stay tuned. This is our 6th year of using a regional analysis to look at systems that are not confined to a municipality, like transportation, and to posit how this view could possibly enhance our efforts around housing. Our title, Getting to Opportunity, seeks to start a conversation about how different kinds of opportunities are distributed around our state, and how to ensure equitable access to every Rhode Islander for these quality of life needs that lead to success and well-being. If you hadn't noticed, the pandemic has highlighted how geography shapes opportunities for well-being. Given the distinct character of Rhode Island cities and towns, and how that has been locally codified over time, the goals and strategies of our state and its municipalities are sometimes out of sync. The map on this slide, which is an example of the central region, is merely an example, but please notice that this year's maps have been updated with more major routes and transit hubs from Transit Forward 2040, our state's first master transit plan. We are committed to the ideas that a diversity of housing types is needed in all places that reflect the geography and meets the needs of all Rhode Islanders, and that balance of land use with equitable access to opportunity will create the well-being we are talking about. This year's regional pages include an overview of the region, including a narrative, which are very fun to write, and what we describe as regional development opportunities. These are ordinances operating across the entire region's municipalities, a housing toolbox, if you will. Future research will involve the success and/or challenges of how these ordinances are performing to produce the homes Rhode Islanders need. The second third includes what is now our regular look at affordability of the single-family homes sold across the region to that region's households by income and tenure. This year, we've added a second curve to note the growth in unaffordability as this is compared to 2018. The second graph represents brand new research on renter cost burdens by number of bedrooms and renter income quintiles, which was inspired by a question and then input from Providence's planning department about what is needed. We hope this proves helpful to discussions with developers. And lastly, the bottom third is our attempt to offer what we are calling equity factors, and includes each region's demographics, the percentages of unprotected lands that are zoned by right for single family, two family, and multifamily, transit costs, the presence of high-performing schools, and the availability of municipal recreation sites. We do not presume to do this analysis unilaterally and invite all to this conversation, which should be informed by many stakeholders across many fields of expertise and lived experience. The goal, however, should remain singular: equitable opportunity for well-being of all Rhode Islanders, no matter where they live. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce.
Actually, we're gonna hold off on Rhode for a second.
Okay.
So, but why don't you introduce him, and then we're gonna do some trivia.
Okay. All right. So
There will be a test. I told you, Factbook's up, so you can see the five answers. Introduce Bryce, and then
Okay.
we'll call her.
All right.
And then I'm going to call our fearless leader up.
All right, so Bryce started with Housing Works, Rhode Island, back in August 2021, and jumped in with both feet on zoning and land use report of all 39 municipalities. He grew up in Richmond, Rhode Island, but spent 6 years in Florida before coming back to Rhode Island. Since returning, he has taken on deep learning of GIS and helped lead our training work with our HES communities. He was recently appointed to the Richmond Planning Board and holds their seat on the town's Affordable Housing Board. When he comes up, please give him a warm welcome.
Thanks. Thanks, Annette. Thank you so much. And I know this is all geeky data stuff, which Annette and I love, but these details matter, and they do matter a great deal in terms of how we get things done and built. So we're going to keep moving along with some trivia in a second, but I want to acknowledge our colleague Courtney from United Way, and United Way and Rhode Island Foundation and Rhode Island Housing have been the core funders of Housing Works and were the founders of Housing Works many years ago now. So we appreciate that support, and thank you for attending. Kyle serves on our advisory board and is the new chair of the Housing Resources Commission, and so we're always grateful for your help and support. I know Carol Ventura couldn't be here today, but I know many of our Rhode Island Housing colleagues are joining us today, and Amy Raynon serves on our advisory board. And actually, I'd like all of our advisory board members to stand up or raise your hand, and thank you for all of your counsel and advice over many years. So. Thank you. Before I call our chair up to do our game show host, Steve, our advisory board chair, at the risk of her being mad at me, I want to congratulate Nancy Smith-Greer again, who just recently retired as HUD State Director. And Nancy is thankfully going to stay on our advisory board. And I know she'll be mad at me, but Nancy's just a quiet, unassuming person. You get the WD-40 can, because she's the one who made things work at HUD. I have Bryce come up and ask our elected officials to say a few words. Why don't we do a few trivia questions? Yep.
No game show music or anything? All right, good morning, everyone. Hope you were listening to the beginning there as she was reading some of the facts and figures. These three I just picked out for trivia. If you know the answer, I guess I'm going to say raise your hand, but nobody's going to do that. You're all going to yell it out anyway. So, but we just want to identify whoever the first person is that answers the question correctly. So here's the first question. Sobering question too. Where can someone with a median household income of $70,300 affordably buy a home in Rhode Island?
Nowhere. And I think I saw
To get the
Mary
correct
Rose.
answer there, you have to identify a winner there.
Mary Rose, I think I saw
Unfortunately, the
Mary Rose.
answer is nowhere. Nowhere in the state right now. Here's another question for you, and we'll see if you can get this question correctly. In 2021, how many calls regarding housing did United Way's 211 call center receive?
United Way guys can't answer that.
Yeah. No help over here.
Of course, you know we're getting a lot.
A lot is good, in the right direction.
Specific, Ms. Paola.
United Way's 211 call center, how many calls did they receive regarding housing?
Take a guess. 100,000. Who said that? Okay. Hey. Over here, Vanessa.
Who said that?
Vanessa did.
109,000 calls from United Way.
Vanessa.
All right, I'll ask you one more question for this state. Where can someone buy a median renter, where can someone rent with a median renter income of $38,339 affordably in the state? How many communities?
One.
You know the name?
I heard Barbara over here.
Barberville, one community.
Some of us are missing there.
All right, Brenda, we got to move along with
We're going to
some
move along to
introductions.
They're calling you back. Okay, there will be more testing, so keep your Factbooks open. So we'll have a few more questions, hopefully, time permitting. So now I'd ask Bryce to come up. We have been very pleased to be working and diving in deep on a zoning atlas project, and Bryce, probably 2 or 3 minutes, so we're going to make you cut short to just go quickly out. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, Annette, a couple minutes ago.
Working?
There we go. Okay, so our recent work on mapping, nationwide attention has been shifting towards the influence that land use and zoning policies have had in creating inequities in our housing and making the production of more affordable housing types difficult, if not impossible. I'll go more in depth in the ensuing slides, but just briefly, it's important to mention that we've taken a lot of our inspiration in this space from primarily two sources in our neighboring states, Desegregate Connecticut and Massachusetts Housing Partnership, or MHP. Not only have these organizations influenced us and our approach to research, but they've also successfully driven important policy discussions and changes within their respective states, namely Connecticut's elimination of character as a legal basis for zoning regulations and Massachusetts' new MBTA multifamily zoning requirements. So here, we see Desegregate Connecticut Zoning Atlas, a tool that standardizes and examines zoning across the state of Connecticut, zeroing in on how zoning overwhelmingly favors single-family homes on large lots, making the development of more diverse, affordable housing options all but impossible to build. Here we see MHP's Transit-Oriented Development Explorer, or TODEX, and it approaches housing from a slightly different lens, looking instead at land use as it examines the existing residential density within a half-mile buffer around transit stations, with the goal of highlighting how different communities' development patterns exist around transit and where there's room for improvement. MHP has since expanded this into what is called residensity, which seeks to examine all of Massachusetts residential density regardless of proximity to transit. The way I like to think about these tools and how they interact with each other is that Desegregate Connecticut Zoning Atlas examines kind of this hypothetical density or what could be built according to zoning ordinance, while MHP's tool examines existing density or the housing that's actually there. And so what our mapping work has looked like to date. Over the last year or so, we've dove headfirst into zoning and land use research. This has come in many different forms, from introductory lessons on zoning's intersection with affordable housing development with our health equity zones, to more in-depth research on how zoning and land use manifest themselves across municipal borders and along transit routes, all the way to the zoning data that we've included in this year's Housing Factbook. We're really, really lucky to have the expertise of Chris Schutz, a project manager at Church Community Housing Corporation, who's helped us, and especially me, really get up to speed with GIS and mapping, and has really enhanced the kind of analysis that we can do. And so join us. HousingWorks Rhode Island is really excited to be a part of the National Zoning Atlas Collaborative Project, and this is an outgrowth of the work that Desegregate Connecticut spearheaded. Fortunately, we're joined by quite a few New England states, namely Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire, which really plays into a lot of our focus on this idea of regionalism. We're also really grateful to have members of the Hawaii Zoning Atlas team in attendance, I think online.
A field trip,
Yeah, they're not here, they're online, I think. But this project has proven to be really exciting and highly collaborative across states. We're all helping each other, and it's just a really exciting environment to be in. Our work with the National Zoning Atlas is currently underway, and we're actively looking for partners who share a common interest in creating a comprehensive look at zoning throughout the Ocean State. So now I quickly we talked about the regional sections, quickly want to go through the local housing facts, the municipal pages. In the municipal pages, we examine the following factors that influence affordability. The first being a general overview of population, households, income, and the percent owners and renters. Then we look at housing costs. Here we examine the median single-family 2021 home price for owners and the Rhode Island Housing Rent Survey average for two-bedroom rent, of course, where it's available, as well as calculations of monthly housing payments, estimate of income needed to afford those payments, as well as a 5-year cost-adjusted comparison of those costs. We also look at the affordability gap, which has been touched on previously, and we really try to drill into what are these costs to owners and renters compared to monthly incomes. Of course, we highlight those cost burden households and the current housing and development. So we look at the housing stock, the total number of houses, single family versus multifamily, whether there's infrastructure present and how much, whether multifamily housing is allowed by right in that municipality, residential development ordinances, those strategies to creating affordable housing, as well as the 2021 building permits in each municipality, broken out between one family, two or more family, and accessory dwelling units. We also include a snapshot of long-term affordable homes in each municipality. That's fine. We have key findings, but if you read your housing fact book, you can get those. So that's it for me.
Thank you, and I do want to also thank Chris again and the team, all of our consultants and other individuals who have helped us on this. This is geeky stuff. We like this stuff, and so we love this stuff, and Bryce has dove in deep on this as well too. But this matters, and it matters because almost 90% of our state is zoned single family, and so if we're trying to rebuild and redevelop more affordability, we've got to look at transit hubs, we've got to look at reusing and repurposing buildings as well too. Much of what we consider iconic in Rhode Island, whether it's Wickford Village or Patuxent Village or Wayland Square or commercial corridors that have housing above retail space, can't be replicated under existing zoning ordinances. So time has come for those conversations. We are well aware, thank you, Scott. We are well aware that there's a lot of baggage with that and a lot of folks who are threatened by the talk about changing single-family home ownership, single-family zoning. We are well aware that there are undertones of classism and racism in those conversations. But again, time is up and we have to have those conversations soon. So I want to move us along, and I apologize to our team that we just don't have enough time to dive in deep on all of the details, but encourage you to take a look, and this won't be the last time that you hear us talking about it, but want to acknowledge our elected officials who are here and thank them so much for their continued support. Governor will call you up in a few minutes, but welcome and thank you for all that you've done on housing, and the Lieutenant Governor in a few seconds. I am first going to call on our fabulous congressional delegation. 3 out of 4 could make it. Congressman Cicilline sent his regards, but wasn't able to join us today. But as you know, doesn't mean that he's not supportive of us in a big time way. But I just want to thank them. And again, as we saw from Annette's slide, most of the money that we have for housing in Rhode Island is federal money, and it's largely because of these gentlemen here at the front who have been championing this issue for a long time. So I'd ask our good friend and colleague Senator Rhode to come up and say a few words.
Well, my slide presentation is ready, so let me. Brandon, thanks. You've done a terrific job. Both Annette, Bryce, thank you so much. That's insightful and very impressive. Let me recognize my colleague, Governor Senator Whitehouse, my colleague in the Senate, Congress Landry. Jim, thanks for all your work over 22 years. You really sort of played McKee, Lieutenant Governor Matos, and Secretary Gobert, thank you all very, very much. The truth is, bluntly stated, we have an extraordinary affordable housing crisis, not just in Rhode Island, but throughout the United States. And we have to act now because it's getting worse, not better. And we've taken some steps, some of it prompted by, ironically, the pandemic, that we were able to provide resources to help people stay in their homes. We've discovered that the best form of PPP was a affordable and safe home where you could reside. And so we worked hard to extend rent protections and also mortgage protections. But now we're at the point of not just keeping people in their homes, we have the crisis of building more homes, because this is a supply problem. We don't have enough affordable homes in the state. And we have to do much more. So I'm delighted that the governor, with great insight and great vision, allocated $250 million of federal money. Keep it coming, Jack. federal money to affordable housing. But what is so significant in the efforts that we've heard this morning, we have to figure out how to spend it wisely, how to target it, how to make it work for us. And that's not just throwing money at a problem. That's doing the analysis we've seen here. That's identifying how neighborhoods can change without changing the character of the neighborhood. That we get more housing, that we can use existing properties that are perhaps not purposed for housing, but they can be repurposed. We have to be doing all those things. And we're going to be there, my colleagues in the House and the Senate, to help the state do that great job. We are working particularly with the state at the moment to see if we can tie in the low-income housing tax credit with the $250 million that the governor has authorized. Because every tool in our repertoire has to be used, and we hope we can do that. We know what we have to do. Now we just have to saddle up and do it. Thank you very much.
Senator Whitehouse, would you like to say a few words?
Gladly. First of all, thank you very much, Brenda, and to our whole wonderful housing community. We have a lot of work to do, but I don't think there's nobody better positioned than Rhode Island is to do that work because of all of you. So thank you. I want to thank my colleagues in the delegation, the governor and lieutenant governor, Secretary Gorbea, Mayor Rivera, my elected colleagues who are all here. But I also want to call out two personal thank yous. One is to Nancy Smith Greer, who I worked with for many years. And has been a friend for many years. And can't wait to see what her next chapter is, because it's not blank pages, I can assure you that. And the second is, there's been a lot of talk here about open space and about land use and about affordable housing. And somebody who's worked diligently in that space for many years is Scott Wolf, and a little love for him would be So, we all know, I think, that housing is a virtue and a value in and of itself. But we've really come to learn recently that housing as a social determinant expands that value into other areas. And as we work on addiction and addiction recovery, we see that an essential leg of successful addiction recovery is housing. As we try to drive healthcare costs down by having better outcomes in Rhode Island, we see that an essential leg of a healthy life is affordable housing. And we see, of course, that when folks come out of the ACI and we want to make reentry successful, housing is an essential part of that success. So there's a lot more at stake than just housing, and we get that in the delegation. I just wanted to flag that. I do know that we have a lot of work to do, but I want to join Jack in saluting Governor McKee and the members of the General Assembly for taking a full quarter of the $1 billion we got them and putting it onto housing. So you all had a big win with him, and I'm very grateful. I think it's really important. The last thing that I want to say is that one of my battles in Washington frequently is climate. And when you look at the climate problem here in Rhode Island, it is closing in on being a very serious housing problem. The thin edge
In the maps, they're scary.
The thin edge of the wedge is the houses along the South County shore we already saw fall into the sea during Sandy. And the predictions for other houses that will have sea inside them in predictable decades ahead. But behind that comes the economic shadow of that, which is I can't get insurance for my house any longer because it's too likely to flood. And I can't get a mortgage for my house any longer because it's likely to flood. So whether it's daytime sunny day flooding in Westerly or Wickford, or whether it's the prospect of Warwick Neck becoming Warwick Neck Island, climate is a housing problem for Rhode Island. And if you believe Freddie Mac, the big mortgage company, they say that that economic effect, if you can't insure it and you can't mortgage it any longer, will send a cascade of economic distress across the country, just like the 2008 mortgage meltdown. And that'll be bad for housing in Burrillville, in East Greenwich, and everywhere else, as well as the housing that is directly affected by the seashore. So let's keep our focus on that and make sure that we have a delegation that will do good work on climate in Washington.
And thank you for that reminder. And our work in zoning and land use does unfortunately emphasize those points. Our work with Rhode, climate change is already having health impacts, and we know that. And the wetter our environment is, the more mold, the more health airborne issues that are happening as well too. And so we do have a lot of work. This is why we are the envy of our colleagues across the country, though. We have our delegation who not only comes, they hobnob with the First Lady earlier in the week and then come and talk about affordable housing later on in the week, but they know the details and they understand the connectedness on these issues as well too, and so we're very grateful. And so last but not least, and leaving the delegation soon, but not our hearts certainly, and not hopefully working in the state in other capacities, is Congressman Langevin. And we just can't say enough about Congressman Langevin and his support for all of the work that many of us have done for many, many years. We wish him well. We have a little token of thanks, Congressman, and your last official Factbook for you to take with you as well too. But we very much appreciate all of your hard work. Our housing colleagues have given some housing swag for you, to t-shirts and other things to wear, so that housing stays front and center in your mind. But please come up and say a few words. And again, we thank you for your healthy service.
Brenda, thank you very much. It's great to be here with everyone today. First of all, Sheldon, his talk is very poignant, and it's definitely a wake-up call. Nobody starts talking about these things, especially as it relates to housing. I think my mother, who lives in Connecticut, she has a little place on the water there, and I think what happens if she gets flooded. I know whose house she's coming to. It's an extra motivator to. Anyway, we digress. But I just.
The governor lets his mother live with him.
And I'd be all too happy to have my mother come when she needs to. But Governor's a great example, though. Good, thank you, Governor. I hope the rest of you are paying attention too. But Brenda, thank you, though, for the recognition and for the partnership over the years. It really has been a labor of love, although it's always a very serious time in housing. It motivates all of us because of your work to redouble our efforts to address our housing crisis. I'm so pleased to be here with my colleagues in the delegation, our senior Senator Jack Reed and Senator Whitehouse, and to be with all of my other colleagues in government, Governor McKee, and particularly thanks to Governor McKee for his leadership in addressing the housing crisis, really putting his money where the mouth is, and we can do our part in the delegation in getting the federal funds here, which is obviously a big part of the equation, but it's all about how it's spent. And the governor has made affordable housing and addressing this crisis a priority. I echo the words of my colleagues, and thank you, Governor, for you and your team, what you're doing on this front. Let me recognize Lieutenant Governor Matos and Secretary Gorbea, and all of our elected officials who were here in the room, because the partnership, because with the General Assembly is crucial in this effort. It does take a partnership, and they've been right there as well, and more work to do. But it really has been an honor to work hand in hand with Housing Works RI over the last 22 years, and it has really been an important effort for all of us. And each of you play an extraordinary role in helping to make a dent in this issue. The research and the analysis that you produce, like the Housing Factbook, is an invaluable resource to public policymakers at every level of government, myself included. Over the years, my staff and I have relied heavily on the housing Factbook. I thank Bryce for the presentation that he made today as well. But it helps us to remain up to date on the latest data and trends related to housing affordability across each of our cities and towns. And so the truth is, of course, this year's report really does underscore in so many ways what we've known for some time, that housing affordability really is a crisis in Rhode Island, as it is, of course, across the country, and we absolutely have to keep doubling down to address it. Again, my salute to the governor for his leadership, and throughout my time in Congress, I've along with the delegation worked hard to advance housing affordability as a public policy priority. It's been the top of my agenda for these 22 years, and most recently I worked with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle that led to the Treasury Department unlocking $8 billion in American Rescue Plan funding to be used by Rhode Island and other states to invest in affordable housing across the country. I'm also continuing to fight for the Affordable Housing Tax Credit Improvement Act, which would incentivize developers to build affordable housing units in underserved communities across the country. So again, more work to do, and I will say you motivate me every day to continue this fight. And while this will be my final term in Congress, it really again has been the privilege of a lifetime to serve as your voice and your vote in our nation's capital these last 22 years, especially on housing. And although my time in Congress is coming to a close, I hope to continue working with all of you to make housing more affordable for all Rhode Islanders. It's the right thing to do. It's incumbent upon us to continue these fights together. So with that, thank you for the recognition this morning, for your kind words, but to Housing RI, thank you for your leadership, and we continue this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim's mother also worked for some time at Crossroads in North Kingstown, and so knows housing well. We've got a few little things from our colleagues at Crossroads in your goodie bag. So again, we thank for your service. We know that this isn't the end for Congressman Langevin, and we look forward to working with him in new capacities as well. And you may want to talk to our colleague Catherine at AARP about an accessory dwelling unit for your mother. As well. Where are you, Catherine? Make sure you grab them on that front as well, too. So, but thanks so much. Before we invite the governor and our state officials up to say a few words, I'll call on our fearless leader to do a few more trivia questions.
All right, hopefully you're paying attention here. We'll go to this question here. How many households, well, let's see if we get this by fraction or by numbers. How many households in Rhode Island are cost burdened?
129,000. It's on the slide.
Oh, this young man All right, he had that one right. It sounded like it was a tie. Squirt some of the stuff at your house and then pass the can out. According to Rhode Island's point-in-time count from 2021 to 2022, how much did unsheltered and chronically homeless population increase?
105%.
Wow, 105%.
Who said that? I didn't see who said that. Unfortunately, you're correct.
You are correct. Think about these numbers too when you're hearing these questions here. These numbers are very sobering. Rhode Island's the only New England state where multifamily construction has declined year over year. In the second quarter of 2022, what was the apartment vacancy rate for Providence Metro?
2%.
I think I heard stop first.
2%. 2%. A healthy rate is 5. We were well below that with 2.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. Okay, thank you for participating in our game show. I did also mention when Senator Whitehouse was up, I don't know where he found time, but he's also a new author of a very interesting book. If you haven't had a chance to read and look at it, please add it to your reading list as well too. I'm not sure when you did that, but congrats. Thanks for sticking with us, and now I'd ask that welcome the governor to the podium to say a few words. Welcome, Governor.
Well, thank you, and good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to the Housing Works for the data and sharing that data. I think it's really important that we do that. I do want to recognize our senators and a congressman here today for their work prior to the pandemic, but also during the pandemic. It's been extraordinary. Senator Rhode, Senator Whitehouse, Congressman Langevin, along with Congressman Cicilline, and yes, we were ahead of the curve in Cumberland. We put an accessory unit legislation in that the council passed, and as a mayor I signed, and I took full advantage of it. And when my mom was moving out of her house that she raised the 5 kids in, we had to move in with us, and that's an important point, right? We can certainly free up housing by creating accessory units throughout the state of Rhode Island. It's worked well in Cumberland, and will continue to work well as we kind of work with our municipal leaders, which is a really important ingredient. And I would just want to emphasize that. And as you've talked about zoning and planning, well, municipal leadership is the key to this whole work. So when I'm working with our Secretary of Housing, Josh Saul, I'm forever reminding him that we need to get municipal leadership in the room to discuss about what the plan is going to look like. And we've already started and activated that process, because what we need to do is we need to say to the municipal leaders, and by the way, Josh, when is our written plan going to be ready for, because we have lacked a written plan in the state of Rhode Island for a housing plan. I don't have one in my hands, and Josh, you're preparing that, right? So we're going to have one, and then what we got to let the municipalities know as we take the data that's here and then incorporate that into a statewide written plan, that at that moment in time, every community has a piece of that plan. And they need to know what role they play in that plan, and then we need to make sure that we activate that. And yes, we have appropriated $250 million. I want to really give a shout out to the General Assembly, the Speaker, as well as the Senate President for their buy-in as well. I mean, they led the charge as much as our office did with the federal dollars. In the first budget I had 11 days to prepare that budget, if you recall, March of 2021, which was not I continually have to remind people that that was an uncertain moment in time in the state of Rhode Island. But yet at that moment in time, we put into the budget an annual revenue stream for the low-income housing. And so that is already accumulating, and it's going to add to the $250 million, but that's about $4 to $6 million a year that wasn't there before I showed up, and it is now in the budget that we're going to use those dollars to actually achieve these goals that we're setting. The other piece that I really would like to emphasize is there's a relationship between housing and income, and we need to work as hard as we can to raise incomes in the state of Rhode Island, because that's where you reduce the gap, right? You have the need, you got to build, you got to raise incomes, and then where they meet, that is a different point that on the map that we don't enjoy right now. So our efforts, and again, back to the fact that we did manage the largest surplus in the history of the state of Rhode Island, and we put those dollars towards good paying jobs, and then we also use the APRA dollars, the federal dollars, to complement that, whether we're investing in fisheries down in Galilee, or also $40 million there, or whether it's in Quonset with another $60+ million investing in that port, creating a brand new seaport in East Providence that's going to be the base of an offshore wind industry that's going to allow servicing up and down the East Coast, or whether it's investing in the city of Pawtucket. And we're going to invest in the city of Pawtucket, just as we are opening a learning center, an education center in Woonsocket. We need to double down on this effort in terms of helping train up jobs, develop really good paying jobs in the state of Rhode Island, and then matching those who have this, this income need relative to what we're seeing on the data, and actually work intentionally in those areas to raise people's incomes. And that's exactly what we intend to do. But we also have to take a look at from homelessness to fair market value. And there's a place for everything in that mix. Real estate values are important to families. Real estate and equity in homes is important to families. And that's one of the reasons on the plan that we put together and Josh is leading, that we put in there down payment strategies for those communities that are impacted the most in terms of accessible to the funding and the financing to own a home. And I mentioned this in my State of the State address, we have one of the lowest home ownerships in the state is in the Black and brown community. And we need to maybe focus on that in terms of making sure that the equity that gets developed in home ownership is shared across all our communities that make up our communities. So I would also, I would give you a little, with the Senator Reed mentioned the rental assistance program, where we were able to bring $200 million into the state. And our office took an extreme interest in that as we were trying to get that off the ground. But with the senators and the congressman's help, we retained the entire $200 million. And we distributed that entire $200 million and appropriated close to $20 million for energy assistance. And that was like, should I sign the paper? And I said, damn it, yes, we are going to sign the paper. And we are going to make sure that those dollars go where they were intended to go. And along with the mortgage program, the $50 million that was appropriated, those are going to be distributed too. So my point is, we need to take every single asset that we have and apply them in a way that can reach this goal. I know that right now homelessness, as we're coming up on Thanksgiving, is a real key issue, and I've been meeting with Josh in our office along with the Rhode Island Foundation and others to make sure that we are meeting that need initially in terms of making sure we shelter anyone who wants a shelter during that coldest day of the year, which is coming. And right now we have put monies towards that, $3.5 million with our partners. We've already developed an additional 230 homes with the goal of developing about 350 shelters, beds, to make sure that we take care of the most needy, and then also roll in the social networks that that community needs, as well as other communities in the state of Rhode Island. Because just providing a bed without providing the resources and the work that needs to be there to make sure that we're supporting that need, we fall flat, and we're not going to really move ahead on that. Once we get the shelters in place, then we start talking about making sure that we do transitional into housing that really works, right? So building new housing units around the state of Rhode Island is a top priority. As a mayor in the town of Cumberland, I put a 1% growth model into our community. And if you look at the data, census over census, Cumberland grew at 1% or 10% over a 10-year time frame. And we got to stop being afraid of building housing for families. We got to stop being afraid of saying these words which we all hear. Oh, we can't build for families because we got to put them in our schools. Well, you know what? We want those kids in the schools. You know what? We want the families living in our communities. You know what? How can we expect our sons and daughters to stay here in Rhode Island if there's not housing that they can afford to live in and jobs that allow them to raise their families in a way that they can be respected? And also education that puts them in a place where their trajectory in terms of income increases year over year. And I have made the public comment on the education, and it was so great to be at your alma mater the other day, Jim, with my wife Susan's alma mater, by the way, with Dr. Biden, and proclaiming that Rhode Island College is going to be this place that's going to be a world-class teaching college, preparing teachers. And I think that's the first time since I've been in office where we actually said, look, we have to recruit, retain, and respect our teachers. And what does that mean for us? We're going to achieve Massachusetts levels on education by 2030. And we're going to continue to incrementally improve over the period of time, and we're going to bring partnerships in to do just that. And it's directly related to what you're here talking about today. It's directly related about increasing people's incomes. It's directly related about education quotients, health quotients, and income as well. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody in this room. I'd like to even expand it considerably. I believe you need to bring municipal leadership into this space in a real strong way. And as a former mayor, I'm gonna try my best to make that happen. Thank you so much.
And our colleagues at the League of Cities and Towns are regular attendees and supporters of all of this work, and so we agree with you. It's WD-40 time, right? Everybody needs to be part of this as well, too. Well, I asked the Lieutenant Governor to come up to say a few words. I do want to acknowledge our good friend Leanne Byrne, who's here representing the General Treasurer's Office. General Treasurer serves on the board of Rhode Island Housing and has long been a good advocate, and Leanne is a longtime friend. So thanks, Leanne.
Good morning. Thank you, Brenda, for this opportunity. Like the governor, I want to thank the federal delegation for all the resources that they have brought to Rhode Island. Thank you, Senator Reed, Senator Whitehouse, Congressman Langevin, and Congressman Cicilline, who's not here with us. Congressman Langevin, we're going to miss you a lot in this work, but we're sure that you're going to stick around, and there's so much work that we're going to do together. So thank you, right? Thank you. And I want to also acknowledge and thank Nancy. Nancy has been working so hard, and she has the type of leadership that she gets things done and she doesn't get on the spotlight. But a lot of things have gotten done here in Rhode Island thanks to your work. So thank you so much, Nancy. Governor McKee, thank you for prioritizing housing and allocating $250 million that the Senator told us is federal funding. But you allocated it. You allocated that funding for housing. There are so many priorities, so many calls that you were getting to use the funding for, but you understood that housing was a priority. So thank you for doing that. I also want to acknowledge what you were saying about the importance of getting the municipalities involved. And I want to take this opportunity, actually, I want to highlight and give a shout out to East Providence and Mayor Bob Da Silva, because they recently led an effort and they became the 7th community here in Rhode Island that is meeting the requirement of affordable housing. So congratulations to East Providence for giving us a He showed us that East Providence is not afraid of families and to bring more families to East Providence. I'm truly honored to be here and to continue this fight. I've been seeing all of you. I always say that housing event is my favorite event. I get to see people that I have been working since the beginning. Unibuild Housing, One Neighborhood Builder, in every one of you that I have seen through this journey. We have to continue this work. Right now, we have to make sure that that $250 million get used in the most successful way and that we can leverage more resources and more funding. The governor always says that that $250 million is gonna leverage another $1 billion or more. So let's make sure that we deliver on that promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And as she noted, she knows it from the ground up. She, like me, served on the board of a community development corporation and understands the business, and so we appreciate that. Now, last but certainly not least, I'd like to ask a colleague and longtime friend, Nellie Gorbea, to come up. And as Nellie come to say a few words, Nellie is a longtime friend of housing, as many of you know, a former director of Housing Works Rhode Island. Sitting next to her is another good friend, Nicole, is also a past director of Housing Works Rhode Island. And Nellie, and I appreciate all of your work. As we know, Nellie will be ending her term as Secretary of State, but just like Congressman Langevin, we know is not going away, loves Rhode Island, and will continue to serve in many ways. But Nellie, please join us.
Thank you, Brenda. Good morning, familia. It's a joy to be here with all of you because we're all together and we're in the fight that I know so many of us have worked on for so long. And while yes, the numbers are daunting and the challenges are daunting, I see it every day as I go throughout the state. You know, we see it in our neighborhoods, in our cities, even in our rural areas, right? The cost of living, which really people talk about the cost of things, but it's really basically the cost of housing is one of those fundamental challenges that people face. I see it at the State House where I know that Crossroads and some people are now dealing with 12 individuals who have now set up shelter in tents and in front of the State House, and we see it every day. And so the work is daunting and it's challenging, but we have come a long ways. And we have come a long ways because of Housing Works Rhode Island and the people that built that coalition and got together and said, this is going to change. And so yes, well, I do acknowledge the wonderful federal delegation that we have, the wonderful federal workers, the state electeds. Let's not ignore the fact that it is the people in this room and those that you reach out to that are making a difference in this state. And we can continue to do this. It is having, a coalition that represents the public sector, the private sector, individuals like, Brenda and Annette doing the hard work inside, Stephen Toney, Dave Caldwell, funders like United Way, Rhode Island Foundation, Rhode Island Housing, dedicated people that come out every day, are doing the work in the trenches. People like Carla over at SWAP and Jen and Olneyville and so many of our CDC folks. And then, as this movement called Housing Works got to push housing to the forefront, to say that yes, housing is a social issue, it is a moral issue, but it is also an economic issue. Suddenly, we got a lot of more traction. And thankfully, we have now elected officials like our federal delegation, our executive branch leadership, as the governor said, putting $250 million more into housing. Mayor Rivera at the local level, who is doing transformative stuff in terms of bringing housing to the forefront. And in our legislature, Speaker Shikarchi, and that awesome chairwoman, who's also a Housing Works founding board member, June Speakman, chairwoman, let's give her a big shout out. All working together. So, this amazing fact book, which is also beautifully, as always, and clearly designed and articulated.
Big shout out to Lacuna.
Big shout out to Lacuna Design. Tells us clearly what we have to do. We know what the gaps are, but let's gather that energy from the fact that we've been doing the work. And I see Jeannie Cola from LISC also, who's been an amazing partner in building not just housing, but communities throughout our state. And so we can do this. This is really daunting what's in here, but we can do it because we've come a long ways over the last 15 years, and we're gonna go even further. But we're gonna do it together, working in the communities, working to build the kind of Rhode Island that, yes, every Rhode Islander has a chance to call a safe and quality housing home. Thanks.
Sherry, thank you, and thank you she's sitting right in front of me, and Mayor, apologies, I didn't acknowledge you, but we're so grateful that you were able to join us today. And more importantly, that you're getting things done, and that Tom Deller from working with Central Falls is also co-chairing the Land Use Commission at the state level, and again, diving into the details about all this geeky stuff, but it's this geeky stuff that's preventing us from building in many of these communities, and so we've got to start to untangle some of those knots and spray some WD-40 on the stickier problems. So again, I just want to wrap up and thank everyone for attending. It's so nice to be back in person. Thanks to all of our folks on Zoom as well too. We appreciate your support, and Sabine, again, I do want to thank, I don't know if our folks from Lacuna are here, but the Factbook looks so beautiful. Where are you? Oh, there you're there. Lacuna Design just does absolutely gorgeous work. If you're looking for somebody, hire them. I do want to thank at the table in the back the Factbook staff, again, for all of their hard work as well too, and particularly calling out our interns from Brown, Toby, and others who, some who can't be here today, but our partnership with interns at both Brown and Roger Williams University for a small team is invaluable, and so we very much appreciate you guys for all of the work. And again, my colleague Amy Cola for pulling this all together and for letting me drive her crazy. And then Heidi and others from Roger Williams who help us all the time with these. And last, thank you for all of our sponsors for your generosity and support. Now let's get some housing built. Thanks again.